The Pink Patriarchy, when feminism becomes a brand instead of a liberation project. There's a version of feminism that looks great on Instagram. She wears a pussy hat. She has a TED Talk cadence. She speaks fluently in the language of empowerment, choice, and women supporting women, and she means it, genuinely, just not universally. Her feminism operates within a narrow, carefully managed frame where inclusion is conditional and disruption is discouraged. This is the Pink Patriarchy, a form of feminism that centers white, cis, middle-class women, markets empowerment as an aesthetic, and reinforces existing systems of power while insisting it represents progress. It doesn't dismantle patriarchy, it updates the branding, and once you learn to recognize it, you start seeing it everywhere. Defining the Pink Patriarchy. At its core, the Pink Patriarchy is feminism optimized for comfort, optics, and profitability. It is designed to feel empowering without being destabilizing, to signal virtue without demanding structural change. It most often appears as aesthetic feminism, a politics of symbols rather than substance. Pussy hats and pastel protest signs stand in for strategy. LinkedIn's girl boss culture reframes systemic inequality as an individual confidence gap. Lean in advice assumes not only access to the table, but safety at it. This version of feminism prioritizes visibility over voice and safety for some over justice for all. Success is measured by who gets platformed, funded, published, or praised, not by who is materially safer, freer, less surveilled, or less criminalized. The result is a feminism that reads well in press releases and keynote speeches, but leaves underlying power structures intact. This is feminism as public relations, feminism as branding, feminism that is easy to sell and surprisingly difficult to challenge without being accused of divisiveness. And that leads to the uncomfortable but necessary question beneath it all. Have you ever watched feminism function more like a marketing strategy than a liberation project? Because that's the tell. Where did this come from? To understand how the Pink Patriarchy took hold, we have to look honestly at feminist history, not the highlight reel, but the exclusions that shaped it. From the beginning, many feminist movements were built on selective inclusion. Black women, indigenous women, trans women, sex workers, disabled women, incarcerated women, undocumented women, and poor women were routinely sidelined, deprioritized, or explicitly shut out. The idea of universal sisterhood was always aspirational at best and dishonest at worst. It masked real power differences between women and erased the fact that some women's liberation was achieved through proximity to systems that continued to harm others. Respectability politics became currency. Proximity to whiteness, marriage, motherhood, education, and good behavior determined who was deemed worthy of rights, protection, and sympathy. This is where the long-standing tension between liberal feminism and radical liberation work hardens. Liberal feminism asks how women can succeed within existing systems. Radical feminism asks who those systems were built to serve, who they harm, and whether they deserve to exist at all. The Pink Patriarchy resolves that tension by choosing the first question and calling the answer victory. The commodification of womanhood. From there, it's a short step to corporate feminism. As feminist language became culturally valuable, it also became commercially valuable. Empowerment slogans started appearing in advertising campaigns. Self-worth was reframed as a lifestyle choice. Structural inequality was repackaged as a confidence problem women could solve by buying the right products or adopting the right mindset. Campaigns like Dove's Real Beauty initiative or pop culture feminism distilled into something palatable, like the Barbie movie, gesture toward critique while stopping well short of threatening economic or political power. The message is carefully calibrated, feel seen, feel inspired, but don't ask for redistribution. In this landscape, empowerment becomes product placement. Feminist influencers build personal brands while frontline organizers struggle for funding. Survivors are invited to speak at conferences, but rarely hired to lead organizations or shape policy. Lived experience becomes content, not authority. So we are left with a hard and persistent question. How do we challenge a system that teaches girls to break the glass ceiling when so many people are still locked out of the building entirely? If feminism can be bought, sold, and monetized, but not redistributed, something fundamental has gone wrong. Masking harm with progressive branding. The pink patriarchy becomes most dangerous where it intersects with policy, philanthropy, and nonprofit work. This is where progressive language is used to legitimize harm rather than prevent it. We see it in organizations that center survivor stories for fundraising while refusing to hire or meaningfully compensate survivors. We see it in institutions that tokenize marginalized voices in advisory roles while maintaining exclusionary leadership structures. We see it in movements that speak fluently about equity while reproducing inequality in practice. In anti-trafficking spaces especially, the pink patriarchy thrives on save her narratives that center donors, law enforcement, and institutional authority while erasing autonomy, labor rights, and lived expertise. Feminist rhetoric is used to justify interventions that expand surveillance, policing, and incarceration. This brand of feminism frequently supports carceral solutions while calling them care. Sex work criminalization framed as protection, family policing framed as child welfare, abortion restrictions cloaked in concern. The language sounds progressive, the outcomes are not, which raises the unavoidable question: how do we call in mainstream organizations that talk equity but practice exclusion without allowing the harm to continue unchecked? The Florida feminism context. These dynamics play out with particular intensity in Florida, where feminism exists in constant tension with reactionary politics, aggressive criminalization, and deep economic inequality. Florida has produced powerful organizers, mutual aid networks, and survivor-led movements that understand the South on its own terms. It has also struggled with respectability politics, donor-driven agendas, and national feminist frameworks that do not translate cleanly to local realities. In the South, feminism that ignores race, migration, incarceration, labor, and survival is not just incomplete. It is actively dangerous. Real intersectional leadership here looks less like branding and more like risk. It requires trusting people closest to harm, letting go of control, and redistributing resources rather than rhetoric. Where do we go from here? Naming the pink patriarchy does not mean abandoning feminism. It means refusing to settle for a version of feminism that feels good but changes nothing. Liberatory feminism in practice centers those most impacted by policy, values lived experience alongside academic theory, funds organizers rather than influencers, and shifts power within movements, not just in government. This kind of feminism requires discomfort. It requires listening. It requires relinquishing the idea that feminism's job is to be likable or marketable, because solidarity is not a slogan, it is a practice.